Imagine standing before your bathroom mirror, adjusting your hair or checking your reflection before a big meeting. To you, this object is as common as a toothbrush or a chair. But for 99% of human history, the image you see, a crisp, clear, color-accurate reflection, was considered a divine miracle or a dark omen. Before the invention of the modern mirror, humanity existed in a visual fog. Our ancestors caught glimpses of themselves in the dark, trembling surfaces of still ponds, or the distorted curves of a polished copper bowl. In the ancient city of Çatalhöyük, in what is now modern-day Turkey, the first mirrors were fashioned from obsidian, volcanic glass that was ground and polished until it reflected a ghostly, darkened version of the world. These weren't tools for vanity, they were ritualistic objects, believed to be windows into a spirit realm where the dead looked back at the living. As civilizations rose, the obsession grew. The Romans and Egyptians spent fortunes on polished bronze and silver, but these metal mirrors were heavy, they smelled of sulfur, and they tarnished within days. The world remained visually blurred until the 13th century, when the Republic of Venice realized that the power to see oneself clearly was the ultimate commodity. They moved their entire glass-making industry to the tiny island of Murano. Officially, this was to prevent factory fires from burning down the wooden city of Venice, but the reality was far more sinister. Murano became a high-security industrial prison. The Venetian government, overseen by the shadowy Council of Ten, knew they had discovered a secret worth more than gold, the ability to create cristallo, the world's first truly clear glass. If a glassmaker tried to flee the island to sell the secret to a foreign king, they weren't just fired, they were hunted down by state-sponsored assassins and executed. To own a Venetian mirror in the 1500s was to own a piece of forbidden technology that cost more than a literal naval warship. You weren't just buying a reflection, you were buying a secret that men were imprisoned for life to protect.
By the mid-1600s, the mirror had become the ultimate weapon of soft power. King Louis XIV of France, famously known as the Sun King, was obsessed with the idea of absolute transparency and light. He envisioned a palace that would outshine every other monarchy in history, Versailles. The centerpiece was to be the Hall of Mirrors, a 240-foot gallery that would use massive mirrors to reflect the gardens and the king's own glory. But there was a staggering economic problem. Venice held a total monopoly on mirror production, and the cost for the number of mirrors Louis required would have emptied the French treasury. In an act of early industrial espionage that rivals any modern spy thriller, the king's chief minister, Jean-Baptiste Colbert, decided to break the Venetian hold. He sent secret agents into Murano to bribe and extract 3 master glassmakers. These men were smuggled out of Italy under the cover of darkness and brought to Paris to establish the Royal Mirror Factory. The Venetian Council of Ten did not take this theft lightly. They viewed the loss of their glassmaking secrets as a threat to national security. Soon, the defecting glassmakers in Paris began to die under mysterious circumstances. One by one, they succumbed to agonizing stomach ailments that many historians now believe were the result of Venetian poisoners operating in the heart of France. Despite the assassinations, the French managed to extract enough knowledge to complete the Hall of Mirrors. However, the victory was hollow for the workers. The process the French and Venetians used involved a terrifying substance, a liquid amalgam of tin and mercury. To make the glass reflect, it had to be coated in quicksilver. The sheer volume of mercury required for the Hall of Mirrors meant that the very walls of Versailles were built on a foundation of chemical toxicity. The king got his Hall of Light, but the men who built it were walking into a slow-motion death sentence, breathing in vapors that would eventually dissolve their minds and bodies.
The mundane mirror in your home today is safe, but for nearly 300 years, the production of mirrors was one of the most hazardous jobs on the planet.
The process of silvering glass with mercury was a nightmare of industrial hygiene. In the factories of the 18th and 19th centuries, workers labored in hot, unventilated rooms, leaning over large tables where they poured pools of liquid mercury onto sheets of tinfoil. Their skin was constantly in contact with the silver liquid, and the air was thick with colorless, odorless mercury vapors. We now know that mercury is a potent neurotoxin that crosses the blood-brain barrier. But to the workers of that era, it was just an occupational hazard known as the tremors. Within months of starting work, a mirror maker's hands would begin to shake so violently they couldn't hold a spoon to eat. Their teeth would loosen and fall out of their gums. But the physical decay was nothing compared to the psychological collapse. Mercury poisoning leads to a condition called erethism, which became so common among mirror and hat makers that it birthed the phrase "mad as a hatter." These workers suffered from pathological shyness, intense irritability, and sudden violent fits of rage. They became ghosts in their own communities, unable to socialize or function, their nervous systems frayed by the very objects meant to celebrate human beauty. The irony was devastating. The elite would sit in front of these mirrors for hours, applying lead-based makeup and admiring their status, completely oblivious to the fact that the object reflecting their image was created by men who had lost their sanity and their lives to produce it. The mirror became a literal fief of souls, consuming the health of the poor to satisfy the vanity of the rich. This era of Quicksilver Madness only began to fade in the mid-1800s, but the environmental and human toll left a stain on the history of interior design that is rarely discussed in modern history books.
The dark, poisonous era of the mirror finally came to an end in 1835, thanks to a German chemist named Justus von Liebig. He discovered a process called chemical silvering, which used silver nitrate to deposit a thin layer of actual silver onto glass. This was revolutionary for two reasons. It was significantly cheaper, and it didn't involve the lethal use of mercury. Suddenly, the mirror was democratized. It moved from the palaces of kings to the bedrooms of the middle class, and eventually into every gas station restroom and handbag in the world. But as the physical danger of the mirror vanished, a new psychological darkness took its place. For the first time in human evolution, we became an image-obsessed species. Before the 19th century, a person might go weeks or even months without seeing their own face clearly. Today, we see our reflection hundreds of times a day, not just in glass, but in the black mirrors of our smartphones and the digital lenses of social media. This constant self-surveillance has led to a modern epidemic of body dysmorphic disorder and a profound shift in how we perceive our own identities. We have moved from the obsidian abyss of the ancients to a digital hall of mirrors where every flaw is magnified and every reflection is filtered. The mirror, once a rare portal to the divine and a high-stakes secret of the Venetian state, has become the most mundane object in our lives, yet it still holds a terrifying power over us. It dictates our self-worth, fuels billion-dollar cosmetic industries, and continues to distort our reality. As you finish watching this file, and perhaps catch a glimpse of yourself in a nearby reflection, remember the glassmakers of Murano and the poisoned workers of France. The mirror was never just a piece of glass. It was a tool of obsession that changed the way we see the world, and more importantly, the way we see ourselves. The mundane file of the mirror reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can look at is your own reflection.